Welcome to another episode of Well-Adjusted Mama. This is a podcast dedicated to educating and empowering women from preconception, pregnancy, birth, and through early motherhood on wellness lifestyle. I'm your host, Dr. Laura Brayton, and I'm a maternity pediatric chiropractor as well as mother who has hand-selected experts in natural holistic healthcare specialties to shine light on options and choices during this exciting phase of a woman's life. Today's episode focuses on consciousness and parenting and how history is shaped by stories. And I had the pleasure of interviewing my guest, Jay Aedo, who is an international entrepreneur, teacher of practical philosophy, and children's book author. Born and raised in Southern California, Jay often felt the weight of the different belief systems his parents, teachers, and religious leaders followed. As a writer and community leader, he encourages his young readers to look beyond the antiquated programs of the stories repeated for centuries. For the first time in the history of children's books, Conscious Bible Stories tells Bible stories from a superconscious perspective. Jay embarked on this journey following his realization that the narrative of victimhood, fear of responsibility, and accusing others for our own mistakes has gone too far. From Adam blaming Eve for having eaten the forbidden fruit, to the story of Cain lying to God about having killed his brother Abel, these tales subtly teach us to look outside ourselves for validation and blame. Jay's mission is to show others how the truth of God lies within all of us. He encourages his young readers to take responsibility for their actions and to never be fearful of speaking up for themselves. Conscious effort is the key to empowering children all over the world to create their own story from the very beginning. For more information, you can check out his website or find him on Instagram at consciousbiblestories.com. Welcome to the show, Jay. I'm very excited to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So I am a big fan of discussing conscious parenting. I've had other guests on the Well-Adjusted Mama podcast in the past to speak to that topic because it's really important. As parents, we're creating the next generation, and there's a lot of power that goes into that. So today's topic is consciousness and parenting and how history is shaped by stories. So Jay, let's talk about why you're so passionate about conscious parenting and actually how this type of stories that we tell our children impact this generation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it started with sort of the relationship that I've had with my parents and how it's evolved. And it started very much with those stories. So, growing up in a religious household, these stories were very prevalent. And so I feel that these stories shaped our lives, but also created a very large distance between my parents and myself. And because there was just so much guilt and resentment and a lot said, a lot left unsaid. And so, sweeping years and years of sweeping things under the rug. And then at some point I decided to switch it where I didn't allow them to know how annoying they were to me. And instead I flipped it around and just started complimenting them and giving them sort of an acknowledgement that I wasn't giving them before. And because I realized that no matter how much I thought they could have done better, they did really do their very best.
Yes, they did.
And so just letting them know that, because nobody's letting them know. So a lot of times the only times we know about something is when somebody is courageous enough to confront us and tell us about it. And in this case, it was somewhat easier to just tell them the things that they were doing right. And then so I've created a new relationship with my parents because of this. And then based on my philosophical views, I've been able to write these stories and share them with my friends and their kids and kind of build a little bit momentum.
So Jay, how old were you when you had that switch?
I was 33, 34.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking you might have still been living at home with your mom and dad. I don't know. Were you living at home?
No. I went off. I went off into the unknown. It's kind of like these Abrahamic stories, these biblical stories that we repeat on a loop.
Yes.
And, I went through the self-exploration. And then so I had the epiphanies and realizations. And then I came back and kind of started piecing them together and see how that really applies in real life.
Right. And I'm thinking having that separation and that distance you were able to get that perspective, right? It was just hard to see when you were in it. It was part of your daily life. You were ingrained. You mentioned it wasn't even just your parents. There was also, the leaders at the church, I'm sure that you were attending, and just other elders in your life that were perpetuating these stories that are from a Christian perspective, right? But that are antiquated and are, not really. It's interesting. Like the purpose of Bible studies is to teach lessons, right? And how to be a good person and be kind and things. But your perspective was, wait, there's maybe a different message going on here as well that's not so positive. And how can we shift that narrative for the next generation?
Absolutely. I feel that these stories, whether it's done on purpose or perhaps just serendipity, the way that things work out, is that these stories are actually telling us how not to act. And in that, it's still sharing the story very matter of factly. So even though it's telling us, don't kill your brother based off of guilt and resentment and shame, it's acting that out. So it's sort of telling us how to act in a sense. And so I think many of us learn in different ways, but the way that I like to learn, the way that I like to teach, is I like to say the things that are rather the things that aren't. So I like to say, tell me what it is. Don't tell me what it isn't.
Yes.
Tell me how to act. Don't tell me how not to act. Because
Right.
how not to act can go in so many different directions. There's so many things you shouldn't do, but there's only very few matter of fact things that you should do. And I think that I illustrate that in these books where, Abel's nobility is kind of redefined in a sense for us because, in the original story, the noble one just dies.
Right.
But in this story, the noble one is able to stand up and fight for what he believes in and kind of put things in their place. And so that to me creates in my imagination a whole new realm of possibilities as to how we can potentially evolve based on the stories we're told when we are most vulnerable, when we're growing up.
Right. So you're writing these Bible stories from a conscious perspective. You're doing a series of 5. The first one is Cain and Abel. It's available. It's a children's book, so you can sit and read it with your children. And it's interesting. It's like, what is historically correct, right? We don't even really know if the Cain and Abel story per se actually happened, right? Nobody's alive that actually was there. We can't ask Adam and Eve. Like, it's like, so we can assume it happened. We don't know really for sure, but regardless, to your point, it's teaching people what to not do. And I think anytime we're teaching and we're modeling, we want to do it from a place of positivity and consciousness. And that is like, I'm leading by example, not like, don't do what I'm doing, right? Like that is not really going to be very helpful when we're teaching people that are the next generation to come, or even our peers, really. And even our parents, right? So what did you teach your parents when you were age 33?
Well, it's funny how you just said, it's like I started acting the way I would want my son to act, or the way I would want to act myself, the best case scenario. If I'm happy and healthy and I'm and abundantly thinking, then but I didn't say it. I didn't say what I was doing. I just did it, right? Like you said, you lead by example and things fall in line. So my parents just started acting differently. Of course, not right away. This is over years of phone calls and kind of giving them this, very subtle new program that I've been instilling in my life. And not only with my parents, but just the way I approach business and I approach my friends and I approach, it's just the way, it's just a new way of looking at things that allowed many doors to open. So with my parents, our relationship has completely shifted in the sense of we're having conversations that we weren't supposed to have, but we're getting past on the other side. On the other side of that, there's a lot of growth. And, just recently, my brother died actually. And I was able, as the youngest son, kind of being able to step into a role that I didn't realize I was even capable of. And I was only able to do it because I had already set like a new footing with the relationship with my parents and my sisters. And so, I'm very proud of myself for being able to even get myself ready for something like that.
Right. I mean, wow, that's intense. And, I'm hearing a lot of healing that has occurred in your relationship. And I think, as a mom myself, I really enjoy witnessing how much my son has to teach me, right? Because sometimes I think parents just think like, I'm the teacher, I'm the older one, do what I say. My husband likes to say that, do what I say, I'm your dad, right? But, children really are, there's a huge growth curve that's available. They're a mirror to reflect back to us where we need to do more growth, right? And it's this beautiful opportunity to grow together, right? We're all growing and learning from each other. So that's amazing. So as you decided to write these books, I'm curious if you did a lot of theology study to kind of even understand how the Bible was written and why it was written, and in general, kind of the patriarchal type of wording that's been incorporated in it. Like, did you study that at all? Or you just said, no, I know what to write without knowing all of the backstory?
I mean, I grew up studying the Bible.
Right. But what about what created the Bible, right? Which is a different thing.
Sure. I didn't do any extra research as far as like, I wrote these stories from a new perspective that I evolved myself.
Got it.
And as far as understanding where the Bible comes from, it's without a doubt us. We're the only ones telling stories. It's humanity. And one of the things in my philosophies and that I share throughout my stories and my writings is the idea that we are just this one whole thing, kind of divided by history. Things have been lost in translation as we tell stories to the best of our ability. Without a doubt, things get lost because just the same way when not everything is said. You can't say everything. And a lot of times we leave things unsaid on purpose because maybe we're lying. Maybe we're lying to someone else, or maybe we're lying to ourselves. And and then time continues, right? And that's how his history is written, through time. And so I just feel like we've gotten to a place in time where we are realizing that we've lost our way, in a sense. And we are finding this within ourselves and within our community. And so I feel like, finding the source, who wrote this, I feel at this point, like you were saying earlier, it's kind of irrelevant at this point to my day to day, like the things that I actually do to become happy and content and fulfilled within myself. The fact whether these stories are real, whatever that means to you or not, is irrelevant. And so that's why I feel that it's so empowering to review these stories with a new light, because it's not that important. After all, they're just stories. The only thing that makes them true is the fact that we're picking them up and running off with them as if they were true.
Correct. So, we're taught that they're true, right? Like that, at least I was as a child, and I'm assuming you were too. Like this is the word of God, right? You said that humans wrote the Bible, but I was taught differently as a child, right? So that can be confusing, right? As we're like growing up and trying to understand what's true, what's not true. And it's really what is our truth, right? And I think that's what you're sharing here in your stories. So I'm curious about your journey. So Jay, what did you do after leaving your parents' house that really raised your consciousness, where you had these ahas, like, I want to live my life differently than how I was raised? Tell me that story.
I don't have one single story. I suppose I just went out into the unknown, because in this sheltered church home that I grew up in, going out into the world, that's the worldly thing to do. You don't do that. So it was a lot of me.
You rebel.
Exactly. So it was a lot of confronting my fears, confronting my demons, understanding myself, understanding the things that I like, that getting hurt, falling in love, falling out of love. I lived my life essentially. At some point, realizing, being introduced to different things as far as meditation, plant medicine, other things that kind of made my brain work differently, kind of put myself, kind of just kept, because I did learn by taking those leaps of faith. I really did learn how to heal through the process and become grateful that it led to the man I am today. So it's like, I understood this idea that, like that building character, the importance of building character. You can't shelter your kids through adulthood. It doesn't work. You can't give them, eighth place trophies for the rest of their life. It doesn't quite work. And so I think that it's an important in a man's life. And when I say man, I mean woman also, just humanity, mankind. It's important for us to take that leap of faith at some point and sort of go against our upbringing, go against our belief system, and sort of go based on just that gut feeling, knowing that on the other side of that darkness, you will eventually find light. And the fact is that if you're still alive, it's inevitable. You will see it. And from that, you'll grow, just like, we know how plants grow, and it's through struggle. And, that how that seed is born is a process that's important in order for us to bloom into whom we're supposed to become according to our own beliefs. And I think that's a very empowering analogy, because everything is vetted within itself. Like in the universe, in nature, things repeat, and you can find the way just by studying nature within itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even the birth process, going through the birth canal is, not the easiest process in the world for the mom or baby. But it's essential, right? And there's a physiological purpose. The cranium gets, starts moving, and it starts getting the nervous system, cerebral spinal pump going. So like struggle is an interesting word, but there's an intensity that is purposeful. And I think that's so important. I was literally just having a conversation with my nanny. She's originally from Hungary, about the culture, at least in America, right? And that's where I'm at, versus European culture, for example, and how the teenagers have a lot of freedom and independence, and how that is so essential for their maturity and their growth. And when we look at the US, you can't smoke and drink till you're 21, but you can go to war and fight at 18. And all the things that we're setting these up, we see like teenagers are epidemically having anxiety and depression and really massive mental health stuff going on, that we don't see as much in other countries. And, school violence and guns and school shootings, all these things, is we have to question, what are we as an American culture teaching and raising this next generation? What's going on here? It's because we want to keep them safe, and by doing that, we're sheltering, and then it backfires. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a whole, we're doing our very best, but what we do in nature is take advantage of situations. And I think that's what we've been doing. We take advantage of people's ignorance throughout history. And so obviously, if we can get away with making policies where things are distorted, and, we can take advantage of putting people into war before their frontal cortex is developed, before they can decide, no, this is not a good idea. People are going to take advantage of that. And but a lot of the things that I'd like to talk about is that these things, I don't believe are here to hold us down. I believe they're here for us to break through. In the same way that they took advantage of it, well, now we can take advantage of us knowing that this is not the way we would want to be brought up and our kids to be brought up. And we can shed light on this and act accordingly, right? Because we don't have to act the way that we don't have to act that way.
We don't have to. No, we can do things differently. And that's also really hard as a parent. Just unconsciously, you will parent the way your parents parented you. Even if you're like, I don't want to be like my mom and dad,
Sure.
You catch yourself like, oh crap, that's what my mom would have said or whatever. Because it can be really unconscious, right? And, if your parents were your primary caregivers those first 7 years of your life, they have a huge role in shaping the subconscious mind, right? So, it's the number one is awareness, right? Is just being aware, like, okay, I just noticed this about myself, and then I'd like to change it, right? And then the next step is to learning how to shift that, and it does take practice, and it's not easy. Do you go to church still?
I don't.
Yes, I knew you were going to say that. I don't either.
Stories.
I don't either. And the reason I remember from my childhood, I want to share my Christian childhood experience. Bible study every Sunday. I actually spent a whole year sitting down with my dad at the age of 12 and reading the Bible from cover to cover. And I really cherish that memory because it was such a beautiful experience to bond. But I also remember getting a little older, 13, 14, 15, and being like the boys that were my age were being treated differently than I felt like I was. And I was like, they were rising into leadership positions and that wasn't an option to me. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Even as a teenager, I was like, I don't feel that I'm appreciated as a future woman. Right. And it didn't sit well. And I would have heated discussions with my dad about that as well. And he would point back to these Bible stories, and that was the answer. And I think it's exciting, for me now raising a son that I can do things differently. And, actually, this morning we were taking a look at the conscious Bible stories at breakfast this morning. And, it is exciting for parents to know that they can do things differently and not to get overwhelmed with it too, right? We're all going to learn as we go. We're all going to be imperfect parents. But the becoming aware is just the first step.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the first thing you're probably going to become aware of is how you keep falling into the program.
Right.
And you wonder, because just being aware of it doesn't change it.
No.
It takes conscious effort. And that's where you were saying it's not an easy process, but anything worth obtaining is not going to be easy. And if you see it with that attitude where it's like, no matter what, I know what it takes to get, well, then you know what you're capable of in a sense. And that's what this story is about understanding who we are, what we're capable of, what we're made of, where we're coming from and where we're going. And if we can manage to answer those questions for ourselves, I feel we're really unstoppable.
The other thing, Jay, that came to me is there's two things that we're becoming aware of where we have our little programming pitfalls, but we also really have to be aware of our successes and in ourselves and in our children and celebrate and honor those successes when they're right front and center. Because that, once again, how do we want to perpetuate what we're wanting to create here is the positive parenting, right? Like, it's just like you continue to acknowledge the behavior that you want to continue to see instead of focusing on like the behavior you don't want to see, right? So both of those I think are really important.
Absolutely. That's a very powerful combination.
Yeah. So do you want to mention any other books that are on the horizon in your series, the Conscious Bible Stories?
Sure. The next books in the series is going to be a 3-part Adam and Eve series where I break down, the creation of Adam and Eve. And I kind of, something that I like to do is I take these stories apart and I put them back together the way I see fit according to my beliefs. And then so I feel like there's subtle programs in the way these stories are told. And so I put them, in a different way. Like, for instance, in the Adam and Eve story, when Adam is confronted about having eaten the forbidden fruit, he denies responsibility and he points fingers outwards. And no, it wasn't me. It was the woman. No, it was the woman you gave me. And so what that teaches us, what it programs into us, is to automatically become defensive and not take responsibility for what we've done. And so I changed this story to where, Adam and Eve, they, and then in Eve's situation, she kind of hides and keeps it from Adam. And then so in my story, what I do is when Eve becomes curious about eating the forbidden fruit, she comes to Adam and they decide to do this together, as a leap of faith, going into the unknown. I know this is dangerous. We could lose everything we know and love, but I think it's worth the experience. And so they take this leap of faith together. And so I feel that sort of opens up a new story of possibilities for humanity. And I do the same with God and Lucifer. I did the same with Cain and Abel. I'm going to do the same thing I feel I'm going to be writing these stories because, they're just not being told, I feel. And it's something that I learned when I was talking to my parents. When my brother died, there's a lot of things being not said. And the reason I'm saying them, as difficult as they are, is because nobody else is saying them the way that I want them said. And I think this is one of our purposes in life, is to figure out what needs to be said. Like, we're a witness to God and we're here to speak up and say what you see. And then if you disagree with then it's your duty to also speak up. And this is how we have conversations and dialogue and we work things out. And I think it's very important to say, to find some sort of middle ground. We're supposed to be at the extremes. That's why there's good and evil. There's hot and cold. It's because they're necessary in order for us to find our balance.
Right. And I think I also want to just chime in on what you mentioned about, we don't all have the same belief systems, right? Obviously. So when you see somebody speaking up, speaking their truth, and you're like, that's not really my truth. This is my truth. How do we as adults model healthy, constructive criticism or disagreement with each other that is not from in my opinion, a very immature, like name calling, very lower brain type of like, I'm being attacked, so I'm going to attack verbally, right? How can we really grow from, because at the end of the day, this is not about all of us having the same beliefs, right? But it is about speaking our truth. And really, I think then hearing the other person's truth and really learning from that instead of just saying, well, they think something different. I mean, we could think politics here, right? You're red, I'm blue, and so we can't be friends. Like that's what's currently happening in this culture, in this country. And that's what's getting modeled for our children.
Absolutely. So it's very important to understand that, these feelings are going to arise. Like, first, let's understand what a belief really is. It's a thought that you act on. So you don't act on all your thoughts, right? The only thing that makes your thoughts beliefs is that you act on the thought. So sometimes we're going to get these feeling like we're getting, our program is going to tell us you're riled up, you're getting heated up, this person disagrees with you.
Right.
Well, but you don't have to act in accordance. Like, if you want to tell that person off, you don't have to do that. You could just listen. And then, what do you want? Do you want trouble or do you want actual peace? And so if you want the peace, well, then you have to hear the person out, no matter how silly or ridiculous they may seem, their beliefs or thoughts may seem to you. But you want to pretend like you're that person, and nobody wants to be ridiculed. So you want to make that person feel like they're being listened to, and you just listen to them. And maybe nothing happens that day. Maybe that person at the end of it just thinks that you listen to them and didn't judge them. And it's okay. You don't have to say your point. You don't have to make every time.
Didn't judge. That was a big thing that you just kind of slipped right in there.
You can just let things go. You don't have to win every single fight. You understand what I mean? Like, you don't have to fight. You can just listen to people and let it go. And that's okay too. Because guess what? Next time that person's going to maybe listen to you.
Right.
Because you lead by example.
Right. And I think that, some people might be like, okay, I can listen and I can put on my face, and inside I'm like, oh, this person's an idiot, blah, 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 but I'm not going to speak it. But that is judgment, right? And so at the end of the day, we could even say, even though that person didn't, quote unquote, react externally to what they were hearing, did they really hear it? I think that's the key here, right? Like, did you really hear what that person had to say? Because your little monkey brain was making some judgments.
Sure. And I think that's something that it space and time allows. So if you're able to get through that encounter in a peaceful manner, you can go back and, the thoughts are going to arise, in the same way, like if somebody flips us off in traffic, that's probably going to haunt us for the rest of the day. Everything kind of haunts us, but they're not bad. These are just the thoughts that are arising. So when you make time to analyze those thoughts, you take them apart and see them for what they are, then you can appreciate them from the point of view of the one who's analyzing the thoughts, not by the one who is the thoughts.
Right. And I would say if you can even bless and release that, finger in traffic quicker than the end of the day, you're doing yourself, because that person already forgot about you 5 minutes later. Just like, when we,
or worse off, it's bothering the both of you. And it's just like,
which is possible, but I'm pretty sure the person who flipped you off is moved on with their life, speeding through, and maybe you already flipped somebody else off. And so we don't need to hold on to that, right? It's almost like, if you don't forgive someone, it's like, who is that really hurting? Is that really hurting the other person? Maybe, but it's definitely hurting you. So that's all we can control. We can't control other people's thoughts, behaviors, actions, but we can control our own. And when we do that and we're regulating our nervous system, we are modeling that for our children. And that is so important. So what do you do to regulate your nervous system?
I take cold showers.
Ooh.
I pick up heavy things and I
put them down. Yeah. I'm on a show with a man right now. Well, just from all listeners. Oh my goodness, we don't get a lot of men on the
thing. Really helps.
I'm sorry, what?
Sometimes doing the monkey grunting and get it's hard breathing or something like that really helps to just.
Well, there's that visceral mind-body connection that you're really anchoring, right? When you really feel your body moving and doing things that are hard, right? That's physically hard to do that weightlifting. But I mean, what kind of neurotransmitters are you releasing on the other side? Some feel-good ones, right? So Absolutely. There's that biochemical reaction. Yeah. So, and then you're also like really proud of like whatever number you just lifted, right?
Sure. We're just counting into infinity.
Oh, good. So, I mean, that's interesting. So, because we talk a lot about mama self-care, and they probably would not put either of those two items of cold showers or lifting heavy weights on their self-care list. But, we all have different self-care rituals that fulfill us. And at the end of the day, help to create that parasympathetic, sympathetic balance that grounds us so that going back to, you have somebody in your face who's maybe a little bit confrontational. If you're ungrounded and you're already not feeling good, how much easier is it for you to attack and react to that person? Even the person driving in the car flipping you off, right? So what can we do? So despite those other actions and words around us, we're not caught up in it. We don't get pulled along for a ride.
Yeah. Well, this is when the basics come into play. Like, we already know if we're hungry, we're not going to make good choices. If we're tired, we're not going to make good choices. If you're, you got to take care of the basics.
Yes.
From the time you wake up, you got to wake up early. You got to do the basics. Once you do, and it doesn't even take that long to eat a piece of fruit, to have drink water, really good, high quality water. It might be a little bit difficult at the end of the day to kind of wind down and get yourself to sleep at an appropriate hour, but it's worth it, because the fact of the matter is that any little thing can deter us, can knock us off balance.
Sure.
And caught off guard, you don't know how we're going to react, because we're basically animals surviving. And so the idea is to realize every single day that we are no longer in need to survive on a day-to-day basis. We are here to thrive.
Right.
And the way to do that is to cover the basics, because you do have the time and space to cover the basics for yourself. You are that rich that you can do that.
Yes. Yes. And that's really hard, I think, for our new moms to hear that, because it's like so overwhelming to have a newborn who just requires so much. But, that's where support team comes in, and it's okay to have someone else hold your baby. So you get a shower, you eat a nourishing meal, and take a nap, whatever these basic physiological needs are which are real those first 3 months postpartum, do your best to meet them, and then continue that during your motherhood journey, because we got to put our own oxygen mask on first. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely.
Jay, do you have any last thoughts you want to share with the audience?
I just want to share remind people of my book. A question that I've been asked before is, have I gotten negative feedback from sharing these stories in a different way? And the fact of the matter is that once people give me the chance, they realize where I'm coming from with these stories, and they see that it's pure of heart. Like, I'm not here to cause trouble in your life. I'm here to show a new way of thinking that has helped me in my life evolve. And I do that in a very simple way in children's stories. And to me, there's no more empowering thing than to have a family unit, a community that you can share yourself through and allow things to be well received. I think that we all deserve that in a sense. And I think that we all want that deep down inside. And it's actually within our control. Like you mentioned earlier, how I'm not a father. What gives me the right to write children's books? Well, I
didn't say it that way.
I'm not exactly, but in the sense of, like, I feel like I can do anything I want. And if somebody wants to challenge me, I feel like that's what I want. Like, I want that challenge, because the growth is important for me. I want us all as children, as parents, to do our very best, because if we start the day doing our very best and we exhaust ourselves, well, inevitably we're going to be able to rest in peace, and then we're going to be able to wake up accordingly and give our best again. And I think that's the best loop that I want to be stuck in. I want to be stuck in a loop of giving my best and being in a community that gives their best. And I really do believe it's true, because it's coming into manifestation in my own life. And it gets said, you hear people say this: if I can do it, anybody can do it. But I'm just a guy sharing stories, and I feel like it's as simple as that sounds. It's been very, very life-changing for me.
Yeah, we all have very specific gifts, I believe, that we bring into this earth, right? And we just have to hear those gifts and act on them, right? You clearly got the download that this narrative needed to change, and you're like, I'm the man for the job. And here you are, Conscious Bible Stories. So if people want to check out Cain and Abel, they can go to consciousbiblestories.com. Right. And purchase your book. Is it also on Amazon?
Yep. It's on Amazon. You can look up Conscious Bible Stories or my name, Jay Aedo, and I'll pop right up.
Awesome. Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Laura.
As parents, we have the opportunity to become more conscious amongst ourselves in order to parent and model at a more conscious level. And I love books like Jay's Conscious Bible Stories that really recognize the way we've been doing things for years can be updated. And when we do that, we literally are going to shift the co-creation of this next generation. So kudos to all the adults out there that are recognizing that the growth of the next generation comes from us as parents. So check out his website or go to Instagram at Conscious Bible Stories and take a look at his books.